Hola, historians. Mr. Montgomery. You know what's going on. It's a flip lesson for foreign affairs in the Civil War. Check out the creepy political cartoon. Love this one. A giant cottonhead eating people? Those look like legs coming out of that thing's mouth. England's god, cotton. Yikes! Along with some ships. We'll find out what those are later. So here we go. You know the deal. Make sure you've got the vocab done. You're going to remember the lesson and understand the information better. Take notes, pause it. You know how a YouTube video works because, you're alive on planet Earth. And make sure to answer the wrap-up questions. Bring all this stuff to class so that way we can discuss it tomorrow. Here is where we are on the lecture outline. Look, it's a blue box this time, not a red box. First time ever. Hello, blue box. That's where we are. We're going to take a look at the Trent Affair, Con Diplomacy, a couple other small things to go along with it. So without further ado, grab your notebooks, grab your laptops, grab whatever you're using to take notes. Buckle in, get your popcorn, get your soda pop, and let's start to hop into it here. So we're going to start with the Trent Affair, but we will back up just a touch here and start with hopes for an English alliance, and then we'll get into the meat and bones of the Trent Affair. Now, the South going into the Civil War, they have lots of weaknesses. One of the big hopes they have for independence is going to lay with getting some foreign recognition, just as much as the effort of their troops. If they want to gain their independence, their troops need to fight, but they also need some aid. They need some recognition, just like the American revolutionaries during the American Revolution. So they really thought that Cotton would be able to help secure them an alliance with France or England. They really were pushing their chips towards England because they did have a pretty good relationship with them, and England was buying a lot of the South's cotton. The problem was the English had seen a little bit of the writing on the wall, and they had started to find some other sources for cotton. We'll talk about what those sources are in a little bit, but although England needed this cotton, they found some other sources, and some English, elites would have taken some pleasure in watching the American experiment in democracy fail. But public opinion in England was really for the North because they understood that slavery was at the heart of this, and most public opinion in England, sided with the North. So the South's going to try to leverage their cotton into a foreign alliance, but they're going to be unsuccessful the entire time. Now, one moment where it got kind of hot here, and where the South appeared to be somewhat close to gaining some foreign recognition, was the Trent Affair. This is taking place on November 8th of 1861. So we've got two Confederate officers here. Here they are. John Slidell and James Mason. They are making their way to England to try and negotiate an alliance. Now, it's called the Trent Affair because these two boarded a ship known as the Trent, headed for England. So these two Confederate officers, they get on the Trent and they're steaming off, but they were pulled over by a Union ship. The Union was putting a blockade on. They pull over this ship, they see what's going on, and very quickly the Union warship stops the Trent. Now, the Trent is a British vessel. It's not a Confederate vessel. So it's okay to pull them over, but you have now crossed some lines when you capture these two men, because that's what the Union did. The Union warship stops the British Trent, they remove Slidell and Mason, and they take them as prisoners of war. Now, this violated international norm that you allow diplomats to travel abroad, and it also violated England's, kind of neutrality to meet with different diplomats from different countries. So the English felt threatened by this and were not happy about it one bit, and they actually threatened war if the North did not release these two men and allow them to continue on and meet with English diplomats and officials. So eventually in December of 1861, Lincoln allowed the two prisoners out. They went to England, but they were unsuccessful in their negotiations. Now, Lincoln took a lot of heat for allowing this. A lot of people in the North were very upset, but Lincoln, he was very, level-headed. He was very clear, like always. And his quote was, "One war at a time." And what he was saying to the American people there was, listen, I don't think they're going to be successful one way or the other, so I will allow them to go over to England. Here's a little political cartoon of England demanding Lincoln release these prisoners, and eventually he did so. They go over, they're unsuccessful, and the South isn't able to leverage their cotton into an alliance at this time. So a little flare up, but Lincoln's calm, cool, collected demeanor helps us avoid something that could have been larger. Now, a couple other little things here. The South, they didn't have much of a formal navy, but they were able to buy some warships from British shipyards. So one they bought was the CSS Alabama. The Alabama basically worked as a raider. That's why they called it a Confederate raider. It's kind of like a pirate ship, like a privateer. They just wanted to wreak havoc on Union merchant ships to try to make the cost of the war unacceptable for the North. And the Alabama eventually captured over 60 Union vessels before eventually being sunk off the coast of France. And because Britain had sold this ship to the Confederate States, they even eventually after the war agreed to pay the U.S. some money for damages caused by the Confederate commerce raiders that had been purchased by the Confederacy from England. Now, later, there was also a company, Laird. They had made these Laird rams. They had built two Confederate warships. They started to build them in England in 1863, and they really could have changed the war. These two ships were ironclads. They had large iron battering rams, large caliber weapons. They made the Monitor and the Virginia look very small. They made them look like tugboats. But eventually, the English government had to buy the ships from the manufacturer because they realized the Union would go to war with England if they didn't. You know, Canada was vulnerable, and England realized that the U.S. would be very upset by this, and that they would also, England, lose a very vital trading partner in the United States that they didn't want to alienate. They didn't want to alienate the Union by selling these ironclad ships that we can see one model of right here. So, not a huge deal in the long run. England made a good decision here to prevent the sale and to have their government just buy them from the company Laird, who actually sold the CSS Alabama to the Confederacy as well. But British made good with us. England made good with us in the long run because they understood that King wheat and what we were selling them in our wheat products and other products were more valuable in the long run than King cotton. So, the South, what we're really seeing here, they hoped that cotton would lead to some aid, some diplomacy, some recognition. They thought that they would be able to use this to gain a foreign alliance, but it just wasn't powerful enough to dictate a country's foreign policy. Like I said before, Europe found alternate suppliers of cotton before a shortage could cause a real negative effect to necessitate an alliance. So, from 1857 to 1860, England had built up a surplus of cotton because, like I said, they could kind of see the writing on the wall that things may get violent in the United States. And they also started to have India and Egypt produce cotton, so that way they could simply buy it from them instead of the South. So they weren't able to use this to really leverage it into some type of diplomacy. So the English simply didn't need the cotton very much. Two other factors also influenced it as well. One was General Lee's setback at the Battle of Antietam. At the Battle of Antietam, Lee tries to have a decisive victory in the North that is going to show that the Confederacy can win. Well, it was a backfire. They don't get their decisive victory, and it's going to be hard to gain recognition if you can't get decisive victories in enemy territory. So after the Battle of Antietam, that's also hurting their ability to gain some type of foreign alliance. And then the last factor is Lincoln's issuing the Emancipation Proclamation. It was well received by the British working and middle class, and the British had abolished slavery in 1833, so there's not enough public support, there's not enough military support because the Confederacy simply can't win a decisive victory, and cotton isn't even doing enough to gain the economic support either. So the South tries to use cotton to gain some type of foreign aid and recognition, but in the long run, it simply doesn't work. Lincoln's calm, cool demeanor avoids some major hostilities in the Trent affair. The Alabama is successful, but only for a limited time. The Laird Rams are never even sold to the Confederacy, and we just went over the big points how cotton, the war effort, and the Emancipation Proclamation impact this as well. So as we look forward, excuse me, what we're going to start to see here is the end of slavery, some very large decisive battles like the Battle of Gettysburg and Vicksburg, and eventually we're going to see a Union victory here. But we've still got lots to see, and we just saw one very small part of the war, how the South was unable to leverage their cotton into any type of foreign aid and or recognition. So as we wrap it up, make sure that you've got your post-lesson questions finished. Make sure that you bring your notes and your questions to class so we can discuss it all tomorrow. And finally, can you name this song? I'm going to see if I can get it to play here. So a little Vitamin String Quartet version here of a certain song. Tell me who this is, the artist and the song. Put it on a small piece of paper tomorrow. Bring it to class for a punto of extra credit. Well done. Adios. Goodbye.